intruder, big deer. I can't believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. And we're hot. We are back with another episode of the Fall Podcast. It's actually episode 286. And what I ended up doing is Derek and Jake, obviously we all work for Latitude. I end up having them come up here because we want to do some editing stuff and go through some podcast stuff. And we're like, hey, we're here. Let's record a podcast. So David actually came up here and we did it in studio. It went really well. And we actually went out to dinner before we did this. And I was like, what do you guys want to talk about? And, we're just like, let's just roll off the cuff, BS. And ended up being a really good podcast. Not that I didn't think it was going to be, but without really any topics. I mean, I think we were going to talk about some goals, which we did a little bit. But we get into like the parallels of hunting ag and hunting hill country. I mean, we got Jake here that hunts a lot of hill country. And, David and I hunt a lot of ag ground, and Derek does a little bit of the both, so we do a lot of the parallels, and it's a really good podcast. So this one I think everybody will enjoy. So got nothing really else going on other than obviously you can see I'm trying to change up the background a little bit, make this a little higher production. But that is right behind me, the great Hambino, as you can kind of see him there. But he was actually out. I had him out in our main part of our living space down in our basement here, and I decided to bring him in and put him on that pedestal that I made, and there he is in all of his glory. So I know he's kind of hard to see, but he needed to be in here somewhere because he's a big part of the brand and the podcast and everything. So and a big part of one of the best memories I'll never forget. That deer right there is he meant a lot to me. So yeah, changing that up, but really no updates right now on any merch. Still waiting on all the garments. Everything's slow. I apologize. But things are coming. So, and I just want to refer a little bit to last week's podcast, last Friday, about the Mitch Rampolla buck. And I've got a lot of DMs and a lot of people reaching out. And I wasn't going to do any more podcasts on this. This was literally going to be the only one. But I had a couple guys reach out to me that they know a guy that's a world-class taxidermist and actually makes replicas for a living. So he's around antlers all the time and knows how to build them and everything. And they brought it up. They hit me up and they were like, I think it'd be a good idea if, this guy, he'd be the one to talk to about the Rampolla buck. And I guess this guy has broke down the Rampolla buck before in some videos, so I'm pretty interested to get him on. So I think we're actually going to go down that route. Why not, right? Here we are. It's everybody's got cabin fever, and so I think we're going to get him on, and we just got to figure out a time when to do that, but it's coming, so we'll do that for sure. We got some good podcasts coming up. We got the Pottinger Way series running right now. We got episode 1 of that out, and we're going to be doing episode 2 here shortly. And that one's going over really well. People are just love to listen to Troy and learn from him. And I don't blame him because he is really good at what he does. And he's attention to detail and he's high level. And I just can't thank him enough for wanting to do this. I approached him with it and he's like, yeah, why not? Let's go. So super appreciative of Troy for doing that. So, all right, let's get in some partner reads here, and I got some codes and some discounts that you guys want to stick around for. And one big one, I think it's a big one. Garmin, I got actually a little discount there for you guys if you guys are looking to get a Garmin. So let's start with Helix Broadheads. If you guys, FJ4, FJ2, if you guys want to try these out. Turkey season is literally, I know turkey season is going on right now in a lot of areas, but Michigan starts in like 2 weeks, just about 2 weeks. And if you want to shoot with a bow, get out there and do it. You know what I mean? And get some FJ4s, man, or FJ2s, one or the other. But use the code FALLHX10 at helixbroadheads.com to get those broadheads coming, because you want to get them now. And start shooting them and go shoot some turkeys with them. So Latitude Outdoors, the Fall Podcast, all one word, all lowercase, saves 25% off on Latitude gear. Go there if you guys are looking for a new saddle, new ropes, new accessories, anything like that. Use the code the Fall Podcast, one word, lowercase, for 25% off at latitudeoutdoors.com. Also, we are still doing the stick pre-order. So go over there, and if you guys want to get these new sticks, do that as well. Matter of fact, I just went and scouted. Kevin Leach and I just went and scouted yesterday, and it was a really good time. And in the swamp, got beat up in the swamp a little bit, but that's what it's for. The public land, Michigan swamp, and it was a lot of fun. Got wet, but you know what I mean. That's I need to get outside and enjoy that a little bit more. So that was a good time. But we did some stuff on the sticks. So if you guys, like I said, if you guys want to know more about the sticks or get on the pre-order, because literally they are going to ship them out as they get, as in order, as your name is on the order. So get there and get them done. So Exodus, if you guys are looking to upgrade cameras right now, they're doing a upgrade program for the month of April, and I'm going to pull that up real quick here so I know. Right there. So the month of April, right now, they're doing basically like a cash for clunkers. They used to do that thing back in the day for cars. That's what I call it, cash for clunkers, but it's literally an upgrade. If you guys have an old camera laying around and want to get into a new one, you can go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and when you check out with either Rival or Rival bundle, or with the Render or Render bundle, so that means with the solar panel and everything, when you check out, use the code UPGRADE, okay? It'll save you 25% off for the whole month of April, all right? And how it works is basically you go in, like I said, and you order it, you put in the code. It's not case sensitive either. Just put in UPGRADE. It'll save you 25% off, and after you place the order, the Exodus team will send you a return label for your trade-in camera, okay? So after receiving that camera, they'll ship your new camera out. So basically what you got to do is go on there, go to the website, purchase the camera, okay? Use the code UPGRADE, and send your camera. Once they get your order, you've placed it. Once they get it, they will send you a shipping label. You box up your clunker, send it in. Once they receive it, they're going to send you the new camera for a discount. So do that. I've said it on here many times, but you can't look past the 5-year warranty and the 5-year theft and damage coverage. You really can't. It's the best in class. I honestly still don't think there might be one other trail cam company out there that has a 5-year warranty, but I don't know if there is. But that right there and the customer service alone is a reason why you should at least look at these cameras and try to use them and maybe get in one. And they're reliable and dependable. I don't have any issues with these things. So there will be a link in the show notes as well to click on that link, so it'll get you in the right position to get this upgrade going. So next one's Garmin. Go to Garmin.com now. I got to read this because it's a little wordy, and I forgot it already. So you can save $100 off any of the A1 bow sights. So the A1, the A1i, and the A1i Pro. You can save $100 on that right now with a mail-in rebate. You can do it at Garmin.com, or you can go to any Garmin dealer, okay? And you can get this mail-in rebate and save $100. And if you guys are into crossbow hunting, they have a crossbow sight as well. That's a range A1 ranging sight, just like the vertical bow one, and you can save $200 on the crossbow scope. So do that. Any dealer, Garmin dealer, or on their website, you can save some money right now. It's going to be ran the whole month of April. And so get after that right now. That's what I'd be doing. Next is Buck Bourbon. So Buck Bourbon is a new partner, like I said, and we're teaming up with them on the ground blind side of things. And right now they're doing the 2 ground blinds that they have are the 300 plus and the 150 plus. I'm sorry, and The 150 plus is on their website at buckbourbon.com. The 150 plus is normally $129.99. Right now it is $99.99. It is a 4-sided hub style hunting blind, just a ground blind, you know what I mean? It's a saloon style spring blind door. So the door is like a saloon style, it just kind of swings open. But the cool thing about it is, you know, it opens to where it's really big, so you don't really have to make a lot of noise or get hung up on anything when you're trying to get in. It's 180-degree silent slide windows, and it includes a backpack carrying case. So that is the 150 plus. Now the 300 plus is a little bigger and is kind of their higher end model. So it's a one-way mesh hunting blind. So in the windows, you know, they have those meshes. You can see out, but nothing can see in. So it's a one-way mesh. It was $169.99. Now, right now, it is $139.99. I believe this sale is only going for another week, I believe. So get on this right now if you guys want a new blind for turkey hunting or for deer hunting, anything like that. Buckbourbon.com. This blind, the 300 plus, has a saloon-style spring door as well. So it's a big door, 4-sided hub-style blind. And it's got the integrated internal blackout curtain system. So you can black the whole thing out if you need to. So really cool blinds. Go check them out at buckbourbon.com. And right now, save some money. Next is Prime. So go to g5prime.com if you're looking for a new bow. Look at the Rev X. I'm more partial to the Rev X2, but there's 2 other models, so go in there, see if you can find something that you like, and check those out as well. And lastly, America's Best Bowstrings. Use the code THEFALL at checkout at America's Best Bowstrings to save yourself some money on some new custom strings for your bow. So there it is. We can get over to this interview with Jake and Derek and David, this little in-studio session. So hopefully you guys like it. There's a lot of stuff to take away from it in here. You guys should like it, but here's this interview with these guys in studio. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Fall Podcast, boys. Here we go. Huh? Little crackle in the voice. Don't know why. That was weird. I was gonna grab one of those, but that was gonna be a bad deal. Just.
I spit mine out. I was like, yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
not.
God. It sounds good though because we just ate B-dubs, and now I'm like, now I need some taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
But we're here in studio. We got Jake Bush with us. We got David Riley and D-Rock.
What's up, guys?
With us. You need to be a little hotter. What do you guys? How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We had some good food, good talks.
Yeah,
it's been awesome.
It's always good to be in Michigan.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Haven't had a bad experience yet.
Yeah.
Well, we got to see a bunch of big deer. That was cool.
You did
big
actually.
Michigan deer.
Should we get into that right off the rip?
I think that's a great topic.
Okay.
Let's do it. Got to show these guys the Michigan experience, and I think Jake's exact words were like, "I don't want to hear anybody bitching about no big deer in Michigan because I've seen them." And this is all honesty. We did see. I took him to some places where, some big deer on the wall. So from Michigan, and I don't know, man. Michigan gets a bad rap. It does, and I won't be the one that's gonna bash it because I know they're here. You just gotta find them, But what did you guys see like after seeing that wall and everything? Like, what was your first thought in your head? Like, everybody's lying to us.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed immediately. You look around here and you can see that the terrain looks right. It's got the recipe for a big deer, and like we talked about, I think it's kind of an age thing more than anything else. But you can see that by that wall, if they get a little age on them, I mean, you guys are producing. There was a couple 150-inch deer in there, which is a giant deer. So it was awesome.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Yeah, the same thing he said. When we were pulling in, I saw the ag, and I never understood why it got such a bad rap around here.
Yeah.
But seeing that wall, I mean, I'd shoot any of those deer in any state.
What'd you guys think of like coming to my house and kind of seeing how open it really is from like what I've talked about in the past? Like, I mean, it's really open.
Yeah,
you're talking wooded fence rows, and that's some little wood lots.
Yeah, it's different than what a lot of like what I've been to Michigan. I haven't been to this type of area. Michigan's really different. Like northern Michigan's completely different than southern Michigan, and around here reminds me of like where we're from in Ohio and a little more out west. So it's really vast out here.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think of northern Ohio, it's almost similar to what Aaron has up here, real blocky, small timber lots, but it's like when you go from northern Ohio into like the deep southern Michigan, that's kind of it's not, there's some small woodlots, but it's a lot of swamp ground that kind of butts up to farm ground. You know, we're up here, a little flatter up here. You can see a long ways, but then like you said, you've been to northern Michigan, and so have you, Jake, where it's like you get up there, then it becomes big woods, where it's like you almost have different stages as you head north in Michigan of how the land lays out.
Yeah. That's, I guess, Derek, you were with us in the northern Michigan deer camp this year. So, like, from there to here,
it's
vastly
completely
different.
It's completely different because I've hunted Northeast Ohio, and I told him we were coming in here, it looks just like Northeast Ohio around here. It's just flat, blocky. It's what you see when you're flying. You see those squares in the big fields. That's what it is. But northern Michigan's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't even think you're in the same state.
It is different. Like, once you get up that Gaylord Grayling.
And Kevin shot his buck. He kept saying it felt like an out-of-state deer for him up there. Yeah, because it's totally different from down here.
Yeah, it is totally different. And when you get into this flat, blocky area, this kind of area will really teach you how much ground a whitetail can cover, how quickly. You come up here in November and you're driving down one of these dirt roads, and all of a sudden, you see some kind of buck on a doe, and next thing you know, he's 2 square miles away. So now he's covered 2 miles in a matter of a minute or 2 minutes. And you're like, wow, like when you really start thinking of like how big an area a buck may call home, I think in these kind of areas, these blocky small areas, it's a lot larger than say northern Michigan or big swamp country. You know what I mean? Where it's like they're more condensed down in those areas here that's more wide open for them.
It's like hill country. It can be bedded from hill to hill. Here it's from block to block.
Yep.
Is that kind of how it is around here?
Yeah. And that's the thing is if, let's just say you have 1 or 2 permissions on a square mile, and if he's not in your little block of timber, you're not even in the game. You know what I mean? Especially until the rut where something, a doe might pull him in, where early season, it's like, if he's not on that little woodlot that you have permission to hunt on, it's probably out of the game for the day.
That's a good point, though. Like, a little 4 to 5 acre chunk, or even a little bigger, even smaller, if he ain't there, it's tough hunting. Like we were talking about it today. Like, remember I told you about the 3 pine trees over there? I said, if you sit there long enough, you're going to have a good deer come by you, but it's going to be the most boring hunt ever. But it'll happen. Yeah. You just got to be there. It's just the name of it around here, and I absolutely love it. But we talked today a lot about, I think you guys can see how much I have to glass. Like, I spend more time on the glass here than I do in a tree. It's not even comparable. And it gets to the point, though, too, where it's like, if you need to make something happen, then you need to get in there. You know what I mean? You definitely need to get into the timber. You need to figure it out, maybe throw a couple sits at an area. But I will say the historical thing is very true in farm ground, just like it is anywhere else. I've got a hub scrape. I shouldn't say a hub scrape, but it's like just a community scrape that, middle of October every year in daylight, there's going to be a good buck on there in a 3 to 4 day window. And that's something over the last 5 or 6 years you just pick up on. And it's like, I know to strike then, and it's worked.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about glassing in this kind of country, I think it's so important it's specifically at one time of the year that down where I live, most of the stuff isn't like this, but I do have a couple little areas, this square mile and this square mile and this square mile all butt up each other, and I may have 1 or 2 pieces or 3 pieces inside those, where I see so much more dispersal during velvet shed in this kind of country. Really, you've been watching them all summer over here, and then all of a sudden, I truly believe it's almost 7 to 10 days after they shed. That's when you really start seeing them getting up on their feet and changing their areas. But in this kind of country, he could be 3 miles away from velvet shed, and you can be completely out of the game if you're not staying on top of them. Especially, that's why glassing is so important.
Yeah. Jake, when you're down in big country, hill country and stuff like that, when you see shed happen and then that shift happen, are you seeing deer in the hill country and big woods like that go that far? I mean, you cover a big wide swath, so you might be able to see, they might relocate a mile, or it might be 4 miles. Like, have you seen something that drastic?
I definitely have, and it's situational, but it definitely can occur. One example of that transition that happens after they shed is like if I glass bean fields all summer that kind of butt up next to the to the public, I'll catch those deer down on the bean fields, and I already have my cameras pre-staged back on the public on the acorns, waiting for that shift. So kind of anticipating that, if you will. But in different circumstances, you don't always see the shift. Like if I have a really good hub that has a couple clear cuts, it has white oaks, it has ag nearby, it's got all these different things going for it. Those deer are kind of homebodies and they're there all year round. Okay. So it's really dependent on the specific terrain and on what food sources are nearby.
I gotcha. Yeah, that I was always interested in that because growing up, and David's been at my family farm, it's big timber. It's not a lot of rolling hills, but it's like a mile section of timber. So like, and I think it might have been part of the the culture growing up is like you bump a buck, he's going to be the next county over. And really in those areas, like with big timber, I really don't think they go that far when they get bumped. You might get a deer that's got a personality that's like, yeah, he might blow out, but majority the deer and what I've seen is they're going to go to the next patch of cover and it might only be 500 yards. And then once they feel safe again, they're going to be all right, so. But I will say, growing up, bumping deer has been like a no-no. I still hate bumping deer. I hate it. We were talking to Andy May about it. He's like, I blow up everything.
Yeah.
Like I push deer all over, So he doesn't mean to, but he's just trying to get aggressive. So I just think the bumping deer thing out here in the farm country to like the big timber, drastically different. Like you said, David, it's like he could be 3 miles away in a matter of no time, and then. In big woods, I think they're just going to the next piece of cover.
Yeah, and that's probably exactly right. They're just a product of their environment. They get scared in a blocky timber situations. They have no choice but to cover ground to get to that next bit of cover.
Yep.
Whether maybe a ditch, a fence line. I mean, even in this this blocky farm country. When you watch them, they don't even necessarily just cut across wide open fields. They're following, old tree lines or old fence lines from, one, block A to block B.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't freely random. They have specific, travel routes. I'll tell you a good example. Down where I'm from, I've seen this happen where farmers will take out tree lines, right? So they can, combine field A and field B. They don't have to stop. They can just, take that tree line out and keep farming that. But even with that tree line being gone for a dozen years, all the wildlife, the turkeys too, the raccoons and the deer, they all still travel it because it's like it's ingrained in them that was there before.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? They've been, since they were, fawns and little babies, that they've been traveling that, and it's just interesting to watch.
Yeah. No, I agree. A lot of, Derek, you come from PA, right?
Yep.
And you grew up hunting PA. So what was the terrain like that you hunted over in there?
Where I hunted locally to me it was residential, but it was farmland, but it wasn't as big as this. It would just be little 60-acre pieces. But where I hunted up the mountains was like northern Michigan. It wasn't as beautiful, but it was just high mountainous terrain, and the difference in the deer, just like from here in northern Michigan, was night and day. I mean, where I hunted locally, you bump a deer, that deer's the same way. It's the 6 farms over, and there's no reason for it to come back.
Yeah.
Because on the way back, it's hitting all the food on the way back. Up there, I mean, there's deer, that's their mountain, but these mountains are, they're huge. So trying to get on one's completely different than the hills of Ohio, Like you bump a deer in Ohio and the hills just keeps going back and back and back.
Yeah. Jake, you grew up in New York, so like what was your experience with terrain up there?
So the terrain was kind of all over the place. We have like the mountainous side of it, and then a half hour from there we have more of like the agriculture side, but it's mixed with a lot of bluffs or rolling hills. So you get a taste of a little bit of everything. You can go hunt the big woods if you'd like to, or you can hunt the typical like bed to food pattern where they drop off the hills down into the ag. And I've seen pretty much all the same things. Like if I bumped a deer in the mountains back home, they would seem to return sooner. And I think it's because they've fine-tuned those areas over the years, and they have like these little pockets that they really love. Where in the ag land, for me, if I bump a deer, I'm probably not seeing him again that season.
Really?
Yeah, it was just different. They were a lot more wiry, and they would just like vacate and disappear. And that's how they survived. There's a higher hunter density. There's a lot of different things that would like balance that pressure back and forth too. So yeah, I mean, I personally found myself hunting the mountains more just to try to get a little more consistency with like that bedding pattern than anything else.
So when you were hunting ag, what was your approach back then when you were hunting ag? Like, was it standoff, wait, glass, then move in, or how did you approach that?
That was my biggest approach. It was normally glass all summer long. We could spotlight in New York as well, so I'd go out and just locate deer and try to figure out some sort of pattern. When I started figuring out like the wind-based bedding thing on top of that, it really opened up a lot of avenues for me, because I could say, okay, this deer's coming from this direction 2 or 3 nights a week coming to this, and he's coming by this one tree. And I would just basically glass all summer up to the opener, and then on the opener I would try to attack. And that was like the most, I had like a 3 to 5 day window to make that happen. New York opens October 1st, so a little bit later than a lot of these Midwestern states. So that time frame that you have to be successful early season, at least in my opinion, is much shorter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my biggest. I mean, I love glassing back home, and I could see that if I was in a state like this or an area like this, I would probably not run a lot of cameras besides like annual cameras that I would check once a year, and I would be behind the glass like you are, driving around every day just trying to locate and pattern deer.
Yeah. That's how I do it, man. It's glass, and I don't run a lot of cameras here, and it's just honestly like at those annual hubs or those scrapes I have, that's just like I want to retain that information. And so far the last 6 years, it is, you can find out pretty good patterns on them that like, and like you said, I love how you said 3 to 5 days or so, because I believe the same thing. It's like when he shows up, it's in October anyway, you know, even up till about October 20th, 3 to 5 days, when he's there, you got to go now, because it's probably your only window it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That is something that's held true every year that I've been hunting out here.
So are you seeing the deer up here shift around quite a bit based on what ag is still standing or being cut as well, like that October time frame?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so, you know, and honestly, and could be mixed reviews from anybody you ask to hunt ag, but I have better years when it's beans. A lot of people like standing corn for security cover and everything like that. I get excited for it, but like I have better years. I've killed better bucks when it's standing beans, and the longer that they are on, obviously the better. But I don't even care if they're green beans. You know, they could be. I've had beans standing in November, and I've decoyed bucks coming out and eating in beans. And like the first buck I killed this year, he came out. It was October 13th, standing beans. He came out with 6 does, and he was mowing on beans at 3:00 in the afternoon. You know, in the wide open, it's like, what are you doing, man? It's like a head scratcher, like you're gonna die. And well, he did 3 hours later. You know, so it's just, but I do see a heavy shift on if it's wheat, obviously there's no food there. You might as well just X that right off the rip. But once the beans and the ground gets turned up, they're gone, beans or corn. So, but yeah, and then, you know, I think one big thing that I've noticed in open country like this, the deer still use the wind, but they throw a lot more caution, or not a lot of more caution. They throw, I'm sorry, I will see more deer walk with the wind to their back into blocks of timber when you're like, what is that deer doing? Like I've seen deer walk or across an 80-acre field with the wind not in his favor at all. That I think, you know, how you always taught, like how deer are supposed to move, and they'll enter a woodlot, and I'm like, holy crap, like, boy, if I was there, you're donezo. You know what I mean? And it's like a good 3 or 4 year old buck too, you know, a buck that should be on with as wits, but I will see more bucks than not use the wind weird. It's weird. And I think, honestly, what I've come to find out is like they trust their eyes more in the open ground. But like for me, when you get closer to the timber and they can't see in there, you'd think they'd shift a little bit and get the wind in their advantage, and more times than not, they don't. Yeah.
Well, with it being kind of open, small timber lots, are you seeing them kind of bedding more towards the outskirts of these lots, you know, using their visual to, you know, watch, say, across to that next lot, or watching their, you know, nightly food source?
100%. I see more deer. I find more beds, more like buck bed types on edges. Like I don't think these deer get in very deep into these timber, and which makes it hard if you don't have multiple access routes to a piece of timber that you have. You could be screwing yourself, you know.
Now in farm country, what's your strategy if it is mostly standing corn where you're hunting? How do you go about hunting that? Or do you just look for a bean field that you can hunt?
Nope. No. And if it's corn, you know, I have 2 spots in particular that they have inside corners that have scrapes, community scrapes that are hit every year, but I will see an influx in daylight activity in those inside corners. When it is corn, I won't lie to you. Like, so I hunt a lot of those inside corners, and the woodlots, I've got one that's 4 acres, and one corner of it is really thick. It's just how it's been grown up, and I know the deer bed in there, so it's just historical. Like you know how to stay away from those areas, and I've set up this one spot. I actually killed in it last year that it's a really easy in, really easy out, and you're not bumping anything. But I hunt the fringes. It's hard for me to dive in because you take 6 or 7 steps in there, you blow the whole 4 acres, and it's like and then like Jake said, you're out of the game, and you could be out of the game for a while. You know,
because I almost would say that it's safe to say that these woodlots, you won't have just a solo buck bedding in there. He's gonna there's gonna be a couple other bucks, and then maybe 3 or 4 does in there. So you're tippy toeing in there. Because if you bust one, like you said, they're all done. Because this is 4 acres.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do pay attention more is does and family groups of does. Yeah. So, I've got family groups of does that call a group or a section of timber home, and you see them every day. You see them every morning, every night. You know they're the same amount of deer. You know what deer they are. You can identify them by their features and everything, and so going into a section of timber, I know that I've got, 2 adult does and 2 fawns in here, possibly with somebody, but that might be bedded in here. So you got how many more sets of eyes? Yeah. That's something I really do take, notes on and take into consideration is these little woodlots. I like to find the family groups of does that call them home before even the bucks, because you got to, going into the situation, you got to know what could possibly be in there and blowing out if you might blow them out,
Have you seen any trends, following and tracking those doe groups, over the years? How are you starting to kind of pinpoint when, hey, I know that there's a doe group in this woodlot and she's going into heat first before, any of these other doe families around here?
Yeah. So I've got a doe, and I can tell who she is and everything. And I would have to say she's got to be at least 6 or 7 right now. And she lives in the same woodlot.
Yeah.
And she uses 2 woodlots. And the last 2 years, she's thrown twins. And then she's got another adult doe that's with her. And she's kind of like the oddball. Like, I don't know why. There's just 4, and they religiously use 2 woodlots. One's 4 acres and the other one's about 6 acres. But I can see them maneuvering from one to the other, but back to your vegetation and like what crops in there, they will pick one woodlot over the other depending on the corn or on the rotation. And it's more like they'll use both, but you'll see them frequenting woodlot A more when it's beans, or it's odd, but it's something that I definitely like to key in on.
Now, do you ever, are these woodlots big enough that you can focus on staging areas out to the ag?
No.
Okay.
It just depends on how they set up, because like a staging area, there's one that's got some CRP that touches it, and it goes from CRP and then it goes to about a group of 4 trees. Yeah. And you can get to those 4 trees, and if you want to call it a staging area, the CRP, they will come out in there and just kind of mill around, and that all depends on if that's corn. If it's corn that year, it's a staging area. If it's not, it's not a staging area. Yeah. So those are some little nuances too that you really want to hone in on. And I took 2 years ago when I shot my Super 6, I took advantage of that. That was kind of what happened right there.
Yeah. I mean, 4 acres, that's almost bedding, staging, food. Like that's almost everything right there.
Yeah. The little bit of farm country that I hunted in Jersey and Northeast Ohio when I wasn't new to it at all. They all just told me to focus on staging areas. That's all they said to food.
Did you ever see any terrain changes in those?
There was a bean field that I was hunting in Northeast Ohio the last couple of years with a buddy of mine, and right on the edge of the bean field, it drops down into kind of just continues to keep going down. There's a creek at the bottom, and that was the staging area. We wouldn't hunt the staging area because we were glassing, and so we knew those deer were coming out. But it was like clockwork; they'd come up from the bottom. We knew they were staging down there because that's where the cameras were. Yep. And they just sit around the creek and just walk around the mill until it got a little dark that they felt safe to come out.
Yeah.
But they were bigger pieces of timber.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I almost think, when you have bigger size, timber, or, hill country or whatever, at least in my opinion, what I've seen in some of the swamp country is you may have that staging area right outside the bed or out right next to the food, but there's actually one that they hit first right outside the bedding. You know what I mean? Like they actually have 2 staging areas, and that first one is going to get you the best daylight activity. And that second one, that's hit or miss. One day you may be there 5 minutes in time. The next time you may be 3 minutes too late. You know, that one that's right on the edge of bedding, that's like flirting with disaster. We get deeper into that next one. That's the key one right there.
Yeah, I'm not a big moon guy, but I think that if you are a moon guy, that's probably what depends on that, how fast they get to that second staging area before they hit that field, and pressure too. I mean,
I mean, and especially you get in, say down in that deeper staging area, right outside of bedding, and you throw a good scrape right in there too. I mean, that's perfect.
There is another instance as well, like, since Jake and I have been working together over Latitude and everything, we talk a lot more and, shooting ideas off him and stuff like that. And then hill country, there's been some parallels I see with, you're looking for low areas, thermal hubs, stuff like that. So I started trying to think about that in like smaller woodlots and how that works. And knowing a woodlot that I hunt, there is a direct correlation to it, but in the hill country that you hunt, you might fall 80 feet to a bottom. I'm falling about 8 feet from like a little knoll down, and they still bed in the bottoms, like quote unquote the bottoms. You literally, it might be a little knoll, and then you might have a little like what do you want to call it, like a little ditch, something like that. But it's really not that big of a difference. You know what I mean? It just kind of like gradually goes up a little bit. And it's flat ground here, but they do hug those bottoms because, and then, I was really trying to paint the picture, and, we get majority northwest prevailing winds, and these beds are all on the southeast little bottom of it, and it makes sense because they're getting that wind in their favor, and I know exactly where they bed every year. So it's like, but it's not something I can get right in on their beds. And, I hunt them to and from, and in that inside corner, and it holds pretty fruitful.
So do you stage hunt like a block like that?
What do you mean?
Like move in slowly, like you'll get on the edge, and then if you don't get busted, you don't see something, you move in farther.
So it's, if I know there's deer in there, and I take that approach, even if I don't see them, I take that approach that there's going to be that group of family does in there if I haven't seen them. And I got to, keep all my T's crossed and my I's dotted. So what I do is I have a method of just like glassing, because there is a little knoll in there, and where I've positioned the tree that I like to get into, it's on the backside of a knoll, and I can get to the base of that tree down a fence row. I have to crawl on my hands and knees quite a bit to get there, but I glass. It takes me a while to get in there. I glass, move up, and usually I'm pretty good. If I can't see them, then I know I can get to that tree. Now, when I get to about 10 feet up in that tree, that's when I'm starting to get revealed. And that's where, it's a pretty good sized oak tree, but I try to keep the tree in between me and the bedding, or where I'm thinking these deer are, and then just try to, get up there. The other thing is I will hunt it on a northwest wind, which means that wind is blowing just off of their nose. And how I have the tree positioned, or how the tree's positioned, now how I put it there, but how they like to use this inside corner, my wind is here, and they're literally cutting it the whole time. And it's the last year when I killed that buck, he was 12 yards, and he was ready to get me the whole time, but it was weird. It was just crazy how they're just, and I stuck him, and it was really cool. It's some of those things that, and I'm fortunate because I get to watch that. I have a job that allows me to be able to watch it a lot. I don't know. It's just some of those things that I thought the parallels from hill country to the flatland, even seeing them on a smaller scale, was pretty neat to see.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that would be interesting to kind of compare between the hill country and the flatland.
Yeah.
A selfish question I have that revolves around the bedding is, we're driving around looking at all these big blocks of timber that are kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and you have these giant fields. And in my head, I saw in one of the blocks, there was a broken down tractor in the middle of the field that was brushed in. And then there's an old torn down barn that was kind of brushed in, or like these big brushy hedgerows. Are you finding mature bucks bedding in those more often than the actual blocks of timber, or are you finding them in the blocks of timber more?
I'm in that particular sense of like a tractor, a barn, not so much, but there are like little patches of oak trees. Like there might be a big oak with a whole bunch of ragweed around it or whatever. There will be that will hold a buck there or hold. And those pine trees I was telling you about, the reason why I said that is because I get to watch those pine trees a lot, and there's a little drainage right there, and it's got some thermal pull with some water that runs through it. A big deer will be there every year, and you'll see them every year. I just can't hunt them because it's not my property. So, but it's just one of those, I think that's kind of a lot what you're saying in a sense of like out in the middle of nowhere, it's going to hold something, but I see it more in the rut phases when he's going to take a doe there. Like there's more times than not, you just look out there and you just see this rack and it's like, and then the doe stands up and you're like, holy shit, he is so bulletproof right now. So I don't see it so much like as a all year or a September, October bedding. It's more of like a take a doe there in a random spot and he's just going to keep him for himself.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll see that in the summertime if that spot offers good shade next to the food source, especially I don't see it too much up here, but a lot of the tree lines and the fence lines down where I'm at, they're also like ditches, so they provide water too. So naturally, that farmer's not planting right tight to that ditch. There's that kind of that buffer, and you'll see a lot of nighttime bedding going on in there too. But you watch them go back in the morning, depending on what way that the shade is with the sun coming up in the east. They may lay there for the half a day, then switch as the sun changes. But as in Michigan, that stuff may happen, and then like Aaron said, that those spots would be good spots where a buck will take a doe. But as soon as kind of that velvet shed and more people, around here, September is like the time to go put your tree stands up, right? It is. Let's be honest, guys. And then all those deer start getting just pushed into different areas, and I think a lot of times, it's even though there's that summer bedding, like our scouting now is kind of for pressured bedding, more or less. You know what I mean? Or like, okay, I know they may lay here all summer, but I need to know where he's going to be in October.
Yeah. There are some, to Jake's point there are some like oil, I wouldn't call them oil derricks, but they're oil, like little oil fields out in the middle of these fields, and they berm a lot of those up around them for like barriers, and they've all grown up with overgrown weeds. I have seen bucks just, out in the middle, because, you have one driveway that goes out in the middle of the field, and there's like this little oil field deal, and I have seen deer bedded up in there, and sometimes it'll hold a couple deer, hold a buck and a couple does or something like that, but you don't see it a lot. You see more of that rut time. I need to get away from everybody, and I need this doe to myself, and that's where I'll take him. You know, and it's very Midwestern type, because when I first saw that was in Illinois years ago, and the guy I was with, he's like, "See that tree out there?" He's like, "I'll bet you in the next week we'll see a buck with a doe out there. Sure as shit. Here's this giant." And he walks her right underneath there. They lay down this ragweed, and they're there, for like 36 hours. It's like, jeez,
There's a doe family that I know of that give it about 2 or 3 days after firearm season opens, and there'll be about 7 or 8 of them every year. I've kept track of this, and there's a lone tree. We see those lone trees out here in these farmers' fields. They're always there from back in the day. Like that would be a good spot for them to stop and take lunch, sit under the shade, enjoy a little time off. But this group of does will go out there, and they'll just kind of surround themselves around this tree, and they will live there for a week or two because of gun season, and they're just eyes each way, but like no one's getting to them, and they'll leave during the night, but they'll all funnel right back in around that tree, and they can see a square mile to the north, south, east, and west. Like no one's touching them. Where it's like they've learned that's a safe spot once the pressure really kicks up for firearm season.
Yeah. Jake, I'm going to go back to hill country here. I got a question talking about like doe family groups and stuff like that. Do you see a group of family does or certain does that might call a hub home, that they're living there and that's kind of what they call home and they don't venture far from there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I've brought that up a bunch this year because of what I was noticing is we've had a lack of acorns for 2 years now. We've had barely any red acorns at all, barely any chestnut oaks. What I was seeing is a lot of the mature bucks would vacate those hubs in those areas, and they would just, I don't know where they're going, to be honest with you. I haven't found them yet, but they would almost like migrate, if you will, out of some of these big wood settings. But a lot of the does and the doe groups would stay there. And I thought that was really odd. It was like, what I would think would happen is the does would vacate to find food first, and the biggest, most mature deer that kind of feels like that's a sanctuary would stay there as long as possible. And I don't have the answer for that yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. But so the answer to your question is yes, I do see does inhabit these like very specific hubs, and it seems like they're more willing to stay in there and suffer as opposed to these big mature bucks doing that for whatever reason. Yeah, it's kind of backwards of what you would think.
It is. That is. Because what I thought it was is like maybe the doe's eating everybody out of house and home, and they'll kick the buck out a lot of times. They'll, because doe family group with 3-4 does in it, they're going to clean up a lot of acorns and a lot of food in a matter of no time. And they would almost keep the bucks out of an area, I would think. That's wild. I got a question. Those chestnut oaks, are they the long acorn? Like the long, skinny one?
Yeah, they are. They're actually a part of the white oak family. They're just the least preferred. But yeah, they're the long ones. I've heard people call them like the hot dog of the deer woods before.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of them up here. I've never really seen them around here.
I don't know if I've ever seen one in any of my hunting
I
areas.
agree, yeah.
I find them normally like on the ridge spines, so where the ridges have the most drainage. For whatever reason, it seems like they do the best at the highest elevation with like the steepest spine possible.
Now, when do they prefer them?
From my experience, they prefer them in the winter months. So December, January, February. I find if we have a good chestnut oak crop, I find a ton of antlers on them. I found last winter 30 antlers on chestnut oaks.
Wow.
At least 30 antlers. I mean, it's unbelievable, but they're not good every year. So you'll have, 2 or 3 years where they won't produce anything, and then you'll have that one good year again. So I just have little pockets where if I get in a late season pinch, I'll try to go check up on all of those and see if I have a pocket of hot ones. And this year I just didn't have that pocket I was looking for.
Wow.
Actually, Derek was with me. We went all over the place trying to find chestnut oaks. That was like the number one thing we were looking for.
Now, are they preferring them later in the season because are they dropping later compared to the other oaks?
I don't think they are necessarily. From what I've seen, they drop just about the same time frame, but it's something to do with the palatability of that acorn. They just don't want to feed on that. They have other preferred food sources that time of year.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I found a ton of chestnut oak scouting this year, and I didn't know what they were. And then I asked Johnny, and he told me about them. So if you have a bad white oak year, but there's chestnut oaks, will they eat them earlier than late season if there's not white oaks on the ground?
There's so many factors. It depends on where you're at exactly. I mean, I have a lot of areas with ag, and that's still like the more preferred food source.
Yeah.
But if you have good reds, then no. If you have no whites and no reds and you have chestnuts, I mean, that's kind of what you got.
Okay.
I'm sure they're going to feed on it.
Yeah. You just wonder if they're almost like too ripe early on or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the fact that they can sit there on the ground all fall and still stay good. You know what I mean?
Wonder if it has anything to do with it because they're bigger acorns, like they're longer. Like if it has anything, like you said, too ripe, maybe not ready, and maybe it takes a little bit into the colder months for them to complete. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of something.
Oh yeah, well, you know,
It sounded good.
Yeah.
The age-old question is trying to figure out the rotation of the acorns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're like, you say, like, well, Reds didn't do good this year, and then you're like, someone would say, well, they must have did good last year, and you're like, no, they weren't good that year either. You know, it's
I
like,
don't feel like there is a rotation.
I can never figure it out. You know,
Whatever the rotation is, it was nothing this year. So hopefully that doesn't happen for the next 30 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's the same thing with apple trees. We've had a couple apple trees on our family farm for years, and it's like, man, every 2 years the one will sprout really good, and then it's like for 5 years it hasn't sprouted, and it's like, what's going on here? And then the 6th year he'll just be almost breaking all his branches because there's so many, so.
Well, and then with apples, that's why I was asking the question about maybe if the chestnuts dropped late, because you see that with apples, like a lot of guys that are, big into managing their land were like, this apple is really good and drops in September, but this one holds into November, and they prefer this one in November. But it's like it's almost strictly because it's just holding later.
Yeah.
But the sweetness of that apple changes from species to species. So the deer just prefer it at different times, or it's I don't know. There's a whole science. That's above my pay grade.
Makes my head want to explode. No, that's cool, and that's like you can like you walked forever this year. You walked how many miles, and it's like you're just looking for an acorn for something to eat, and you never found it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But what I always think's interesting about those years, like say you're out there scouting, right? And you're covering all these, spines or ridges or whatever, acorn flats, whatever you want to call it. And it's just dead of sign. And a lot of people just write that off, right? But you got to put that stuff in the memory book, because it's like, hey, if that thing produces next year, it could go from 0 to 100.
Yep.
So, what I mean? We're like, I've seen it. I've done that, where it's you get into an area and it's like, oh, the sign in here is all old. Well, it's probably old because of the acorn rotation in here. Put that in memory bank, because upcoming years it's probably going to get hot again at some point.
And that's huge for your scouting too. Like I'll get into some of these areas and say I have a big giant ridge that runs west to east. And off the front of that ridge on the north side, I've got a dozen different points that are, let's even say, a quarter mile long, right? Like big, long points. So as I'm going down through those points looking for beds, I'll find a bunch of different bedding areas. And like 2 years ago was a really good example of this. I got into the first point, and it was loaded with beds. And I get down in the beds, and there's hair all over the place. I'm like, man, this is hammered. Like all these other points set up just like this, I found the gold mine, right? So I go to all those other ridges, and I'm diving through all of them, and there was beds, and there was like old rubs in the beds and everything, but there was no hair in the beds. And it got me thinking, I was like, you know what? This is where the white oaks were this year. Oh. And that over there is a red oak flat, and it didn't produce, so they never bedded over there. So bedding is like, you need to scout for beds, but you also need to keep in the back of your head that any bed that you find is going to be used in a certain time period based on the food. Like, a buck isn't going to bed, especially in a big wood setting, in the same bed all the time if he doesn't have food. And I think that's very overlooked. Like a lot of people are finding these bedding areas and they think they found the holy grail, and they go into it the next year and they're like, well, this bed wasn't even used. Well, yeah, there's no food in there. So finding the bedding that correlates to the food source that's active is like, when you can really dial that in, it's a whole new level.
Yeah. You get into those areas like Jake said, and let's just say by those beds, you can see this old scrape, or there's old rubs in there, where the first thing most people would say is, oh, it's dead in here, I'm too late to it. Where there's times where like I'm almost excited, because I'm like, okay, if it was probably good 2 years ago, it wasn't good last year, there's a high probability this cycle goes, this next year it should fire right back up, but it's I've learned that the hard way, though. You know what I mean? Because I've written that stuff off thinking, oh, it's no good. Where it's like, no, if you learn that rotation, it could very well pop right back off again. And sometimes it may take 2 years for it to happen again.
Yeah.
But that's always like spots to put in the back pocket for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's actually a question that I was going to ask you earlier, based on your annual data you were talking about, how you're seeing that annual data shift based on the ag rotation here. Because annual data in the big woods can be really good for like rut situations, at least in my opinion. But where I struggle with annual data is like the month of October, because of those changing food sources, where you almost need to keep annual data based on the year that red oak flat is hot. And think about how much data that would turn into. You've got 1,000 oak flats, and you have all these pictures from different years based on when there was actually active or not. And I mean, you just get in this big mess of data. So I was just curious what you were seeing and kind of how you were going about it.
And this is going to sound really ass backwards, and I know it's going to, but this is what I've got the best community scrape I have in the month of October, from like the 10th, 12th of October until about the 17th of October. A mature buck will hit it in daylight at about 10 or 10:30 in the morning, anywhere from 10 to 11 in the morning, in that 5-day window, when it's beans. When it's corn, I get a more deer, because there's more cover there. I get like a lot of does. I'll get little bucks. And I almost think with more traffic of deer in that area, it might push the more mature bucks out of it for some reason. That's what my head's at. But when it's beans, that time frame, I'm going to be in that tree. I'm going to monitor that scrape, because it's going to happen. It's happened like 4 or 5 years in a row. Not in a row, but like as it's beans, because beans, the rotation has been off. Like it'll be bean, corn, bean. Like it's really weird with the rotation right now. And because everybody seems to think it's like corn, bean. Like the farmer just did something different. But when it's beans, for some reason, a mature buck will show up in daylight, but it's like I said, it's a 3 to 5 day window, And I think when you add the cover, I think it brings more deer in, and I think might push those better deer out. That's where my head's at, and that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, look at the more mature bucks in the summertime. They don't mind some deer. They don't like a lot of deer, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? How many times are they kind of out there by themselves, or they might have 2 or 3 buddies with them, and that's it. Or, let's say in that woodlot, that buck, he all of a sudden he's, 3-4 years old, and he's been around here for a minute. He knows what doe families should be in there most of the time, but then all of a sudden, every Tom, Dick, and Harry brought their families over there too, and now all of a sudden he's like, no, that's too many people in here. I'm out. I'm headed to I'm gonna go lay over here by myself.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me. 2 years ago, I was hunting that same bean field, and we had a family of does come out, and we were after this buck. It was first week of season in Ohio, and the does spooked. They took off. They didn't blow. Getting 10 minutes right before shooting light. Buck rafter comes about 80 yards comes out of the thicket, and he's right on the edge of the bean field, and he just looks down at the corner of the bean field and does not see those deer there that he's been there every time we glassed, and he just takes off, just boogies off because he didn't see those deer there. Yeah. He's like, there's a reason why is there no? I'm normally the last one in this bean field. Where's everyone at?
Yeah. I mean, look at our One Giant Mistake series. I would say 99% of those stories told, and these are the upper echelon of whitetails, right? That
the 1%ers.
Yeah, the 200 plus, the biggest, the big. Where that was a question we asked a lot of them. We're like, what was their demeanor around other deer? And I think there's maybe one story where a deer that might, he had some running mates, but other than that, they're like, oh no, he was completely by himself.
Never seen him with other deer.
Yeah, and a lot of those stories too, like a lot of those. Those 230, 240, 250 inch deer, they don't have broken tines. You know what I mean? Where it's like they don't want nothing to do with any other deer. They've been around the block. I think they know how big they are. You know what I mean?
And I gotta go back on that scrape. That same scrape is, I always pick up a new buck in October. Sometime in October, I'll pick up a good buck, and he'll be there for 3 days. It's a 3-day window, and he's gone, and then I'll never see him again. I literally won't. I'm like, where did that deer go? Either A, he's getting shot, or B, just he's coming through looking for maybe that first receptive doe or anything like that. But out of all the ground I can hunt, and there's a lot. I mean, do some quick math here. I mean, over 200 and some acres in the same square mile that I can, that I can hunt. That new buck shows up on that scrape first every time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is about that, because literally I could walk you over to that scrape, and it's a thorn apple tree, and it's there's like a little grass spot where so the timber runs in a square, and the field goes like this. There's a little grass spot that's wet, and when it gets, if we don't have a wet October, it stays there's just green grass that grows up, and there's this overhanging branch. For 6 years, it's been destroyed. And I don't have to do anything to it. They just find it. The new buck will make that his first stomping grounds. And then I've seen him there, but then I've seen him, he'll show up there, and then the next day he'll be 3/4 of a mile that way on another camera. It's like, okay, that's happened numerous times. But then they venture back over here, and this is just the epicenter. Don't know why.
It is wild. I mean, I like to run a lot of cameras on video mode on scrapes, and like Aaron's exact example, it's like they walk right into that scrape like they know it's there. They know they're not wandering. They walk right into that scrape like they know it's there. Then he just vanishes out into nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's just part of how that little woodlot lays out in the section. I think it's just the first point that all the deer come to, and that's what they hit first. But also we will get a lot of south winds in October, early to the second week of October, that will be very beneficial for deer coming from other directions. Sure. That, that's the first stop, basically. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. There's so many different ways to skin it, and it's like, what do you look at? I love the light bulb moment that you just said about, you found this bed and you're like, this is the hot spot, but then there was no hair in it. And it's like, wait a second, it makes you think, right? I don't know. How far on average do you see deer shifting when acorns might be good or food might be good there with a bed, and maybe we have a year where they don't drop? Are they shifting out of the hub, or are they just trying to find a better spot in that hub?
So once again, it's situational.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing about the hills is the topography changes so much. You know, you could have a system that has 5 different hubs, kind of like what we were e-scouting the other day.
Yep.
Or you can have a system that has like one general hub that's got the clear cuts in it and it rolls out to ag. So it really just depends on what the other food sources are in the area. If he's got a clear cut or he's got like close ag, I'll see him bounce around that hub just a little bit if there's like a different white oak that's hot every year. And they'll kind of target that as they leave their scrape or as they come down the beds. But I've also seen it where they'll shift 2 miles and I'll get that buck like multiple ridges over on a totally different acorn flat. So it just really depends. There's so many factors, but I think it depends on how much food's in the area and like where they think that's going to shift to, you know, and they have better patterns of all these acorns than we do. If we could just get that in our heads real fast, I feel like we'd be a step ahead of them. That's kind of the goal, but it's just not that easy.
Now, Jake, how many bed to food hubs are you looking for in all your scouting? Like, how many do you like keep in a back burner? Because I know you could find one, but it doesn't have that deer you're looking for.
Yeah, I would say if I look at Ohio right now, I probably have 250 to 300 hubs that set up like that I could go into that I at any point in time I feel dangerous in.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter of fine-tuning that down to about 50 of them and running cameras in those 50 hubs. And that gives me a pretty good idea of which ones are going to have the biggest deer. And then if I get in a situation like this year where none of those hubs work for me, I'll pull all those cameras. And like Derek and I were doing, we're running around hubs, just dumping cameras.
Yeah.
Like we were
just throw them in the woods. Just what's good.
And it was like a
middle of the night.
It was, yeah. I mean, in the dark, it was like a 3 to 5 day cycle where we dump them in a new area and go check them. And if there's not a buck in there, well, they're getting pulled again and going somewhere else. But every day we were doing that. So we were doing like 15 to 25 cameras a week, shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting all the way to mid-January really to find one.
How long are you giving a camera before you're pulling it off the tree?
If it's so in the summertime, I'll set them up in like June or July and let them soak until mid-September for Ohio for that late September opener. But once I'm in season, if I don't have anything going, I'm crazy aggressive, like 3 days, 5 days max.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't want to sit and wait on a deer. I'm just like, I have to find one. And it's in my head, and I just have to just run and just try to
Well, it goes
locate.
back to that 3 to 5 day window. If he's there, you know now I got to go. And if he's not, keep moving.
Yeah, and a big factor in that this year was the fact that everywhere we were going, there was just no acorns. So, like, if I would have gotten to an area and there was red oaks on the ground, I'm like, you know what, man? There's food here. Let's let these cameras soak. This is going to heat up at some point in time because we know we don't have food anywhere else. But when you get into the woods and there's just no acorns, and they're feeding on greenbrier and browse and like maybe even migrating to some of these ag fields, you just don't really have that. So yeah, it was just run and gun, throwing as many as we could.
Okay, let's say you deploy your cameras. What is your in-season daily, like, are you moving cameras every day on certain pieces?
I would say that this past season, almost every day we went out, we were moving cameras. It was even on days that we would try to throw a hunt in, we would, if we failed, which we did every time we went out. So, so when we would fail, we would pull cameras and we would just take them, throw them in the truck for the next day, and then wake up bright and early, go out, throw some cameras out in a new spot, and then go try to find an afternoon setup. And it was just kind of like that same rotation every day.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question about the hubs. You know, over the years, kind of monitoring with cameras, do you see quite often that, you know, you'll have, you know, and it's going to be so situational dependent, but where you have multiple hubs that kind of heat up, say, in the same 3 to 5 day window? Do you see that often, or?
Yeah, I do, and I see that the most in the areas that have the most consistent food.
Okay.
Like, once again, going back to the clear cuts or going back to like where the drainage leads out to a cornfield. Something really obvious. When I get in those areas, I do notice that it's like I have one specifically that I can think of, and I've showed you pictures of the antler. I actually had a really good buck in there as a 2.5-year-old, and I had a bunch of good deer in there. It's the first place I ever ran a camera in Ohio. And I put that camera out in June, and I checked it in like mid-July, and I had 14 good bucks on that camera. And coming from New York, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Yeah. I thought I hit the gold mine, man.
Put your ladder stand up right now.
Hey, exactly.
I'm glad I moved.
Yep, exactly. But
put your ladder stand up. I caught it.
I love it. So I monitored that spot heavily over the last 4 years now, and what I've noticed is that between like October 23rd and November 3rd or 4th it is just, there will be a hot doe in there. And it seems like that whole family comes into heat and it's just loaded with bucks. I sent my buddy Drew in there. He came down and we went and hunted it together. And the video's on YouTube. He had the hunt of his life. He was in the stand for like 20 minutes. A 150 comes out of the cut behind him and busts him. Runs back up in the cut, and he turns around, and at 8 points coming down the pipe, and he shoots it at like 15 yards. And it gets better than that because we drug that deer out, tagged it and dragged it out, and we go back in. I'm like, well, that 150's in here. Like, I'm going to hunt this spot and see what we can do. And so I walk up to the scrape. I had a camera on, the old faithful, I call it, because it's always good.
Sure.
And we look at the camera up in the tree, and this is like the lazy Jake moment that I'm kind of biting myself for. I go, I'm not pulling that camera and checking it. Let's go up over top because we just blew out this hub we were in. Let's go up over the saddle and in the hub in the backside and see if that deer that bumped back up into the cut jumps over the backside, right? So we didn't see anything, and we come down that night, and I come back in 2 days later, and I check that camera, and we hit that scrape at 3:30. And at 436, like a mid 160s.
Oh gosh!
It's just working that scrape for minutes. I mean, we would have absolutely smoked that deer.
Well, okay, so I'm going to ask you this: so you believe if you would have checked the camera that day, you would have hunted it?
I absolutely would have because it showed that it was hot for like 3 days in a row.
Okay,
like
all
really
right,
hot.
Oh, other deer on it. Like,
Because the thought was, is that you bumped those deer out of there, so it's like, okay, we gotta keep rolling,
it was loaded.
But
it was loaded with sign, and then that's one of those things where like I try to trust my gut, and that was one of those times where I went with what my gut told me, and it backfired. But next time, my gut instinct's gonna be a little bit different. I'm gonna probably hunt that scrape. So like. Evolving with that gut instinct is so important to me. All these decisions that we make on a daily basis in the woods, like, 17-year-old Jake or Aaron or Derek or David is going to hunt totally different than you do now with all the experiences you've had. And I think that's the best intel that you can possibly have.
Oh yeah. Like that's not a, like that hunt right there. In that moment when you recheck that card, you probably thought that was a big failure, where it's like, it's not though, because you learned from it. Like you can bet your ass that this won't happen again.
Yeah.
I'll at least check it, even if there's no deer on it. I can move on, but I'm at least gonna check it. Like no shortcuts next time. I know that now.
How many times do you think your gut has cost you a deer? Probably a lot.
It's a lot. It's more times than it's got me a deer, hands down. But I just feel like if you trust that, eventually it's going to catch up. And it just seems like the times that I've really trusted my gut and it's worked out, at least in Ohio, it's been like a pretty good deer. So I've been pretty excited.
Yeah. I think not only trusting your gut, but trusting your personal process, how you attack this. There's 4 of us sitting here in a room today. We all have the same end goal. We just don't go about it the same way, and that's okay. But you have to trust your year-round process. When it gets, it's middle of the season, or all of a sudden firearm season fires up, or like I know you had a long season, Jake, where it's like when you get late in the ball game, you got to keep trusting your own process. Because when you start deviating from it, it's probably not going to pay off real well. You know what I mean? Like, just keep trusting what you're doing.
No, I agree, and that's a good point. I think the more that we could like go against our gut sometimes, like, we were just in here tracking a deer through here, why would another deer be in here, kind of thing. Or like there's been times where you track all night and you might blow out an area, it's like, I'm not going to go hunting there. It's the deer that just came through there probably was 2 properties over and didn't even hear you or smell you, or like doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like, I think we get too focused on like we're trying to hunt deer that we think are literally in our bubble right here, when really a lot of deer are coming from a distance away, that we're probably not even touching. It's wild to think about.
I couldn't agree with more about that.
So we're coming up on just about an hour here, but I want to maybe wrap up with just kind of our plans for the fall. All of us, I think we're gonna have busy falls and everything like that, and maybe throw out some goals and what we got going on. So, do you want to rip there, D-Rock? What do you got?
Yeah, we got a big plan this fall for Latitude, and I'm going to hit most of the states we hit this year and adding some more to the list. Obviously, we got more guys. We got a full crew now, and it's great. So we're going to be able to spread out a little more and hit different places. And being able to get guys to spread out scouting is incredible, too, to get feet on the ground instead of just going into we go into these places blind, and we love it, but to have that time to maybe get some intel on some of these states that are farther away from Michigan, Ohio, the goal with that is just kill some deer. I mean, we have the team to do it. We have killers. You know, we have you, Aaron, we have Jake, and Alex, Kevin, Corey, the other Jake,
Metallic.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the goal for me, is putting this show together with you and everyone here in the content team, is to just get deer down. And for me personally, it's my biggest takeaway from this year, and then I didn't get to spend too much time with Jake. Is to really just learn from him, to be able to be in the woods with him. It's a blessing to be in the woods with him and learn what he's doing and just watch him. So just education for me in the woods.
You gonna run up and down some more hills before you go?
Oh yeah. Every morning, incline that treadmill and just start running.
Attaboy.
I'm ready to go. I'm gonna be Jake, come on, hurry up.
Jake,
we gotta get up here.
You're lagging behind, guy. Come on.
Hey, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
Don't you forget about that one.
I'm huffing and puffing.
Yeah. One of you guys will have a backpack leash on this year.
Yeah.
I've seen already.
Yeah, I love it.
That's funny. No, that's good, because I'm super pumped about going into this year and just laying a whole bunch of stuff down, deer and footage, and just having a good time.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and I plan on getting in the woods a little more this year. I'm gonna really focus on early season, because if I can get something done early, then I can really just focus on my work and getting it done for the
Makes
team.
the fall much better when you can kill one early.
Yeah.
Especially when you're filming. So,
Yeah.
what would you say your biggest goal for you, personal goal, would be this year?
Shoot my first buck in Ohio since I moved here. I've shot a buck in Ohio since I moved to Ohio 2 years ago. Didn't recover it. But just to get on a nice deer early season would be a goal for me, and preferably on public land, just because all the knowledge I have now. There's no reason for me to go out there.
Ask Jake to give up one of his hunts. He's got 250 of them.
Yeah.
Like what we talked about earlier, I asked him about like the bed, the food. Like my problems before, I'd find this bed, I'd find food, and be like, this is where I'm hunting. That's my spot. He will find that and then go find 200 more.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm sitting at that spot, I'm like, where's this deer at? And they're like, a little spike will come out. That was the one that was bedded there hitting that food. But now I go into it like I got to find like 15, 20 more of those and then put a camera on it and figure out which one I want to shoot is on there. So
yeah, I like it. David, what do you got?
Yeah, man, I'm just going to, keep going with the process, as I always do. Hopefully both my daughters this year both want to hunt. I know Bailey will for sure, and get her third buck, and maybe Madeline get out hunting too. But for here in Michigan, it's always near and dear to my heart to try to really kill a higher end class buck here. And if that only means filling one tag here in my home state, that's always okay with me. I always try to make it a personal goal though too, is to, and I know that numbers don't mean anything, so this is just a reference, but I really like the challenge of always trying to find something like that 150 or bigger here in Michigan. And it don't happen often. Usually it's every few years, but I really would like to go find another one of those and have the opportunity to hunt them. But then, if I don't, I'm really shooting for that 125 to 130 or bigger here in Michigan. But my family life has changed, and my daughters are getting older and more independent, and it's actually going to start opening up some out-of-state hunting for me. And I've really only devoted a good amount of time for that one time back when I drew an Iowa tag, and I'm kind of really looking forward to that. I might get a trip or two, and hopefully not just a 2 or 3 day style hunt. Really to be able to devote some time and get down into some areas. And last year I was able to share some camp with some of you guys up in northern Michigan, and that was really fun too. And to be able to do that same thing in a little higher caliber area would be awesome.
Yeah.
But and then at the end of the day, just always be a student of the game, man. That's always what I'm looking to do, is just keep learning and kind of keep building that profile of spots to hunt and just knowledge of the areas. So yeah,
I got you.
Kind of the goal, man.
I like it.
Yeah.
Jake, what do you got?
Well, you guys covered a lot of it. I mean, you really nailed it. But no, I would say what I'm most excited for this year is we have an awesome group of guys, and we're going to be able to go out and explore together and have a ton of fun and film it all and just make a ton of memories. I mean, we're going to be in a ton of states. We are going to kill deer. We are going to learn so much from each other.
Coming to each state, just horns are blowing. Here we go.
Yep,
Here they come.
Alex, we're getting a bus. We're going to do it. Throw it in the budget. But no, I mean, David, Derek, Aaron, Alex, Kevin, Jake, Corey, I could go on all day long. I'm so excited to go out with every one of these guys that has a different thought process and different tactics and learn. And I think that's one thing that we're all going to do a ton this year is we're going to learn so much about deer and deer hunting. We've got a ton of scouting trips planned. We've already been down in Kentucky. I've learned a bunch with that. I mean, even Aaron, with e-scouting with you last week, you taught me things about a way to hunt a hub that I've never even considered. And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't that work?
Honestly,
like,
dude, when I sent you that pin, I was like, Jake's gonna tear this apart, but I need that. I need like, and then he comes back and he's like, I probably wouldn't have killed that deer because I would have hunted it totally different. And he's like, that's crazy. Good one. Or, something like that.
Yeah, I throw it in the memory bank.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what, like, we're all students of the game. And I can see that in the way that we talk and the way that we, act around each other and how passionate we are about deer hunting. And there's nothing better than that to me. So I would say my number one goal this year is to take a lesson from each one of you out in the field and just mesh it with my own game and just elevate my game a little bit more. That's what I'm excited for. And I got to film D-Rock get a buck.
Yeah.
That's my other goal right there.
There goes the spike.
You on him, Jake? You on him?
Oh, don't you worry. We're going to have a blast.
Double punch.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point that Jake made is that, this sport's very easy to get kind of into a solo track mind, right? We all kind of do. Like at the end of the day, a lot of times, when the trips are over, we're back home hunting by ourselves. But if you're open your mind up to, listening and hearing how other guys hunt, like that can elevate your game also, just because Jake hunts something totally different than I do and Aaron hunts something different than I do. And so does Derek. But like, if I'm open to it, I can learn because guess what? Who knows? I may be down in Ohio someday hunting and I can take that knowledge then. But the most important part, we talked about this earlier, is when you hear this knowledge from other people, being able to apply it to your situation. That's what makes things deadly. So yeah, sharing camp with a bunch of good killers. It's if you're open-minded to it, it can help you in a big way.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I want to have as many aha moments as like learning aha moments where it's like, yeah. I like that. I get got to do that.
Yep.
I like that. Sharing camp, everything. But learning is the big thing. And then if I had a personal goal, it's just I want to kill my first public land buck. That was a goal of mine last year, and I didn't put a lot of time into it. I had some other things going on private land, so I had. Well, this year we're traveling and we're doing some out-of-state stuff, so I can't wait for that.
Aaron just got all of his private posted with public signs. He's
Yeah.
like, kill it on public, boys. You can't hunt here though, but this is on public.
Yeah, it's public ground. I'm looking down here because I got a question. I'm gonna do we do this listener submitted question. I'm doing it. I got one for all of us here. We usually have people write in questions, and this guy did this. His name's Mason Jantz. Sorry, Mason, if I said your name wrong, but he come with a cool question. He said, and we'll go to Jake first. Would you rather shoot a 140-inch buck in Iowa with a recurve, or shoot? I think I know what your answer is going to be, so I need to tweak this a little bit.
Put a little AB flare on it, buddy.
Yeah. Would you rather shoot a 140-inch buck with a recurve in Iowa, or shoot a 140-inch buck with a compound in your home state?
I'm gonna say my home state's New York, and I'm gonna take that 140-inch deer.
Oh, he pivoted on me. Damn it! The way the question does state is he's like, would you rather kill a 140-inch buck in Iowa with a recurve, or kill a 160 in your home state? And I was like, anybody's gonna kill a 160 in your.
Yep.
So I had to tweak a little bit. So same question to you: home state Michigan, 140 in Michigan, or 140 with a recurve in Iowa.
I'm going Michigan. Michigan's got it's got a special place in my heart, dude. It's just too much time and work put into it. Yeah, I would.
Yeah. What do you got, D-Rock?
Yeah, I'm the same as Jake. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'd rather shoot 135 in Pennsylvania than shoot.
You're making this too easy. Too easy.
To you,
I'm
buddy.
going Iowa recurve, man.
Yeah,
just bend those big old limbs back, just like why not, right? And then have the, I could put all the flannel on and the face paint, and just be like,
there you go.
There it is. I had to be different. I'd shoot a 140 with a recurve.
Yeah,
skip it off his back.
Yeah,
yeah. It would be cool though. It would be.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the one part of that is if you're in Iowa, it's a hunting trip, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time,
Yeah.
So
not passing up a 140 in Iowa. No. Well, yeah, I'm not. I mean, we're with Point Creep, we're waiting maybe 6 years now.
Yeah. Yep.
I can't do that.
Yeah, it's bad.
So, but cool. I appreciate you guys doing this. We're up. We didn't even say why you're up here. You're up here. We're doing like kind of like a work bee for the next couple days, and so I do a little podcast tomorrow. We got a big day of production stuff we're gonna do. So I'm excited about that. But thanks for coming on here. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Everybody out there, thank you for all the support and all the downloads. Please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and a written review. It was always greatly appreciated. Go to Spotify as well and leave a 5-star rating there. So thank you guys very much, and we'll see you right here next time on The Fall Podcast.